very grateful for all of you, for the young people especially, for the fellows, Tom, for your invitation to be here. I know I've only got 10 minutes, so I want to try to take this on as quickly as I can with as little information. I got the abstract. I did the Cliff Notes today. I asked for an early copy, but you guys did a very good job of embargoing the survey. So I just got to look at it today, and a couple of things jumped to mind. The first thing that struck me was the statistic on people's, the millennials' attitudes toward Christianity. 63% of respondents say that Christianity consistently shows love. 63%. And I thought to myself, that's a pretty good number. 63%, right? Pretty good number. And then all of a sudden I looked at the number and I thought to myself, wait a minute. What? 63%? I'm just imagining. So Jesus walks in, and he sits down, and he goes, I'm back 2,000 years later. You guys have been at this, working hard. And you got 63% of people think you show love? And we go, oh, you know, Jesus, these are bad times. The economy's not good. We're coming out of a recession. You know, moral code is in the tank. You know, we really thought we'd err on the side of ethics or right or wrong, or, you know, we really felt we needed to hit that bedroom values issue hard. I mean, that was really important to us. So, you know, and I can just sort of imagine a little play on the story of the woman caught in adultery, and I can just imagine him kind of sitting down and drawing on the ground. Only this time I think he'd say something like, memo to the 21st century. My message is love. You know, to take Julian of Norwich's beautiful expression of her own faith, his meaning was love. I think it's such a profoundly disappointing number. I don't care what else they'd say about, anybody would say about religion. And certainly religions will always have their share of problems, all of them. But to look at this generation and think that 37% of them don't even think that our mainstream religions, and this doesn't say Catholics or evangelicals or mainstream Protestants or anything like that, it just says Christians. 37% don't consistently value or show love. I think it's a profoundly disturbing number, and I think in some ways I want to give it back to you. Now, it's a reflection of, I suppose, my generation, not yours, because it's the millennials saying what they see from Christians, in this case. Maybe they'd say similar things about Jews or Muslims or Zoroastrians or Hindus or Buddhists or others, but the question was on Christians. It's a reflection on my generation, I suppose. But my quick reflection for all of you this evening is to suggest that it really is the fundamental question of yours. I believe we live in what I think of as a spiritual age. I think in very short and condensed form that the turn to the subject of the Enlightenment brought the questions of science and the questions of meaning and value into the interior life. The scientist as the icon of the modern age, as the person who answers questions for him or herself using methods derived from his or her own practice. And so all of the last sort of 300 to 400 years of intellectual history has pushed questions into the interior life. And we have chased religion into the inner life, but instead of creating what I would think of as community of spirits, we've sort of created private religions. And we have left religion into a sphere of privacy, I would suggest, that has robbed it of its spiritual capacity to create connections amongst people, and as a result has created a context in which values are seen. People love the idea of being spiritual, but instead of not religious, it's almost as though it's spiritual but not communal. It's a spiritual pursuit without a connection. Religion is the old symbol of the connections that are broken, that are exclusive, that are rejectionist, that are hierarchical, that are judgmental, and in their place, there is no replacement community, in my view. Again, this is excessively shortened. But at the same time, I think that a period where we are spiritual but not religious, as evidenced in the poll, suggests that new values will emerge. And the question I think we have of this millennial, of this data in a way, is not just what values emerge, but what values we will be drawn toward. In other words, where are we not just in what we believe, but in where we're headed? Not just the values. For instance, I think something that emerges very strongly in here when you see the gay and lesbian data is the idea that we're very committed to, or you all are very committed to the idea of tolerance, of a non-judgmental ethos. I think that makes perfect sense. I think that is the iconic value, if I were to suggest one, the iconic value of your generation, as I see it and hear it in young people when I talk to them, is this issue of universal dignity. What has happened as we've turned religion and the spirit and values inward is we have generalized in a way of deeply Christian or deeply Judeo-Christian or maybe even deeply Abrahamic idea that the spirit does not ration, as the saying, as the reading is today in the gospel, if any of you heard it, that the spirit is not rationed. It is universal. And so people have taken that in a very powerful secular way and said, we're not going to be judgmental. Our children, Linda's and my children, my daughter Kathleen, we were driving about a year ago up on Connecticut Avenue, and we're driving by the Chevy Chase Club, and she said to me, Dad, is that the club that didn't used to allow blacks? And I said, yeah, that is. That's the club right there, no black members. And she said, was that when you were alive? And I'm like, yeah, that was when I was a kid. And then the next question is, how could Grandpa have been alive? I mean, it's incredulous to her that anybody remotely within her frame of knowledge could have practiced the kind of rejection, boundary setting in society, hate, borders. It doesn't compute. And so when religious figures are spouting off these ideas of who counts and who doesn't, I think your generation is just saying, I don't even know who you are. It's just incredulous. It's absolutely incredulous, the idea that we would have discriminatory religion. So I think the iconic value that emerges even in this little bit of data is the idea of the universal dignity of the human family. As you get to universal human dignity, you arc towards theories of justice and fairness, because if there's universal dignity, you can't help but ask the question of whether everybody's being treated fairly if they are equal. And so you get the data, in my view, that asks lots of very, very tough questions about whether our country is fair, with most of you saying no, thumbs down, something's wrong. It's not fair, particularly to people who are poor. So there's an arcing towards an ethic of fairness or justice, I think, that comes from the spiritual but maybe not religious theory. But I guess I wonder, in my own sense, what's the aspiration? Where does this community building begin to form a foundation of a future that we can all see a little bit more clearly? I'd say that, just to give you one example of how I think this time, this era is changing things, is my own experience, our own experience as a family, Linda's and mine, with the Special Olympics movement. It's not religious, no denomination, no prayer, no founding documents that allude to religious sensibilities. We don't use the word God anywhere in the Special Olympics iconography. And yet, when, if you were to imagine yourself at a Special Olympics event, as I was talking to Paul earlier today, and you were to imagine a race being run behind me, and you could see a 12-year-old, let's say here, with Down syndrome, and you know that when he was born, a mother or father would have asked the same question any of your parents asked, is the baby okay? And the answer that mother got was no. I'm sorry to tell you, the baby's not okay. The baby's in probably has Down syndrome, may have heart problems, may have other problems, may have immune problems, he's gone off to the intensive care unit. That's what the mother heard when that child was born. And so imagine that child in a moment of what I would call spiritual reversal, being invited because of you watching and cheering to raise his or her arms in victory and say, I've got a medal on. The medal is an iconic medal. The medal represents the idea of greatness, human greatness, Olympic greatness. It is a gold medal. It connotes achievement. It connotes a championship quality. And yes, I have a 50 IQ. And yes, I have low muscle tone. And yes, I have hypotonia. And yes, I have heart defects. And yes, my ear canals are too small. And yes, I will get Alzheimer's young. And yes, I will not earn money. And no, I will not get PhDs or honorary degrees or anything resembling what we tend to value. No, none of it. And yet. Now, I mention it because I think your generation will look increasingly, as it looks to aspire to where the future takes us, it will look increasingly to institutions and experiences, most importantly, not doctrines, not codes, not constitutions, and not, I dare say, texts, and certainly not dogmas, but to experiences. Your generation will look for the authentic experience. And you will look for authentic leaders, people who are, and when I say authentic, I mean channeling something true. So the question which I give back to you to help the rest of us with is, as you move in this period when institutions lose their footing and have failed, in my view, failed miserably in general, to respond to the hunger of the times. And you are in an institution here where just Jack talking tonight has begun to recover from within the traditions, great religious traditions, the knowledge, the training, the teachings of the schools of the heart that have been lost in many respects. Even Ignatius himself lost to a generation in the dogmas, but now being recovered. Julian being recovered, Hildegard of Bingen, Meister Eckhart being recovered, Francis being recovered, Teresa of Avila being recovered. All of a sudden, all these resources, Rumi being recovered, the Kabbalah being recovered, all these traditions, all these ideas that come from religious traditions but have been left out, not really in effect given to you, as you begin to recover them, as you begin to find, I think, new sources of values and spiritual authentic experience, the question we will have for you, those of us who are excited about where you will take us and force us to go, is where do you want to end up? You know, what's your destination? I feel like you're telling us loud and clear, we don't want discrimination. We don't want exclusion. We don't want hatred. We don't want anything to do with anybody that spouts any of that stuff. But with an openness and a sense of universal dignity and a sense of fairness and justice in play, I think your generation will do things which no generation before you could ever have done. So my hope is that in some small way that this poll is not just good data, good fodder for chewing over you know, where things are, but most importantly, it's good fodder for chewing over where things ought to go. And the fellows here are, of course, our hope on that. And so I want to leave you with a fellow of our own movement, a person I think of as a person who belongs in the millennial generation. I think Troy Daniels is about 26 now. He has Down syndrome, and when he graduated from high school, he was asked by his fellow students to give I guess the salutatorian speech, the graduation speech, and he did it in Lincolnian form in less than, I'd say, 2 minutes. And I'll just give you a short excerpt from his speech because I think it's an invitation to think about where we're headed. So this is his graduation speech. Hi, my name is Troy Daniels, but my friends call me TD. I have Down syndrome. Because my heart is bad, I use a wheelchair. I do not speak very good. And sometimes I use a device called Libby. He doesn't use the device. He just says I use Libby, which is a speech-assistive device. I'm a person with disabilities, And when I say my friends, I mean friends, real friends, just like everyone else. I have friends. Most of you think all people have friends, but people with disabilities, for people with disabilities, friends are not always real. I want you to know why I have friends. To just quick interstitial, not always real. The struggle for authenticity for people who are outcasts. This is your guys' challenge. You know, the circle's been broadened, but this is a radical challenge that he's asking for here. Broaden the circle authentically. Not politically only, authentically. Friends are not always real. Not too long ago, people with disabilities could not go to school with other kids. They had to go to special schools. They could not have friends. They called people like me retard. That breaks my heart. When I came to school, there's a law that says all kids go to school in the place they live. I started school right here in Northfield with all of the senior class. We were little kids together. Law says that I can come to this school, but no law can make me have friends. He goes on, I'll skip a little, but some kids started to think I was okay. First, it was just one or two kids who were nice to me. They found out that I cared about them and I loved my school. I told them I want to have real friends. Others started to hang out with me and they found we could be friends. We started to learn together that in some ways we were different, but in some ways we were the same. They called me friend and made sure that I was in everything at school. I want all people to know and see that these students I call my friends are the real teachers of life. They are showing you how it should be. They are the teachers for all of you to follow their lead. Yes, I am a person with a disability, and the law says that I'm included. But it is my friends who say, TD, come sit by me. So I think Troy is really one of the great millennials. And his invitation around authenticity, around justice, around fairness, is not an appeal like the kind I heard when I was a kid growing up in a political family about changing laws and fighting for justice and moving out into the world and demanding things change. This is very much an appeal at the level of the spirit, in my view, and at the level of the human connections. And you guys have the human tools which nobody's ever had in the history of humankind. You can connect in ways nobody could ever have dreamed possible. And so my hope is that as you think about this data, you will think about how that circle gets broadened in ways that don't just bring people in, but articulate a vision for where you will take us. And then we'll be able to look back and say, wow, what a survey. So thank you all very much.